Explosions rocked the Ukrainian capital, Kyiv, yet again on Monday. President Volodymyr Zelensky accuses Russia of using so-called kamikaze drones to attack the city. According to Ukrainian officials, at least 3 people died following an attack on a residential building. Authorities say Russian strikes in other regions of Ukraine have left several more dead and knocked out power to hundreds of towns.
A bright autumn morning in Kyiv shattered by more deadly attacks from Russia. The Ukrainian capital woke up to a series of explosions early on Monday morning. This residential building, now a smouldering wreck, was one of several struck. At least 3 people are believed to have died. As emergency teams worked to rescue injured survivors from the rubble, shocked residents waited on news of their family and neighbours.
We came here after getting a phone call from our mother, who said she was under the rubble. She said, "Please find someone urgently to help me. I'm buried under the rubble." We don't know if she's still under the rubble. We were told someone was taken to hospital. It might have been her, but we don't know.
Ukraine's government says the attacks used so-called kamikaze drones, made in Iran. They can loiter overhead before finding and hitting a target. Surveying the damage, Kyiv's mayor Vitaly Klitschko said Moscow was deliberately targeting civilians.
They destroyed our country. They destroyed our hometown. They killed civilians right now. And we see the everyday terror attack. It's the true face of this war. As Russians do it, the Russians need Ukraine without Ukrainians, and that's why they killed civilian people.
The attacks come just a week after Russia struck Kyiv for the first time in several months. DW correspondent Fanny Fakshar reported from the aftermath of one of the attacks.
It's unclear just how many people remain trapped here, but one message is clear. Russia is not going to let go of attacking Kyiv city, innocent civilians, in these indiscriminate shellings that the people here are witnessing.
The people of Kyiv had gotten used to a degree of normality in recent months, but these attacks have brought the brutality of war rushing back.
DW correspondent Matthias Böllinger told us more about the attacks on Ukraine's capital.
Yeah, we had several explosions and the most notable damage was this residential building that was hit. 3 people, as far as we know, died in there. The drone seems to have flown directly frontal into this building and destroyed the apartments in there. It might have been targeting a power plant that's nearby that would fit in the pattern that we've been seeing, that Russia is destroying the energetic infrastructure of the country before winter. These attacks on civilians, this is the second big attack on Kyiv since last week, but we've seen these drones, or we've heard that these drones were flying towards the capital several times. Most of them have been intercepted by air defense, but as we see today, 40 drones were launched today, and some of them hit.
Yeah, Kyiv or Ukraine was able to actually intercept many of the drones that were sent towards the capital. What does that tell us about Kyiv's air defense capabilities?
Well, air defense is, of course, very important in this war because Russia has been shooting rockets and recently drones at civilian infrastructure since the beginning of the war. And Kyiv has worked on enhancing these capabilities and also have been delivered some new systems. But the drones pose a certain difficulty because they fly lower than rockets or planes, and it's harder to identify them by radar, and it's more difficult to hit them. Actually, many of the systems, even the most advanced systems, are designed to shoot down planes, rockets that fly higher and that are bigger. So it's impressive how much can be done already without having the proper systems. But there are systems especially designed to shoot down drones, and these systems is what Kyiv asks the partners now to provide.
Matthias, it's been a week since Russia started attacking Kyiv in retaliation for the Kerch Strait bridge explosion. How prepared were people in the capital for something like this, for something like that drone strike we saw today?
Everybody in Ukraine knows that anything can hit at any time, but people, of course, had gotten used. Kyiv hasn't been hit for many months before last Monday, so people had gotten used to that. People here do not really believe that this is a pure retaliation for the strike on the Crimean bridge, as it seems that there is some plan behind it. This must have been planned before. To hit all these infrastructure objects, all these power plants, must have been something they had designed before. They might have launched it maybe, or might have planned to launch it at a different time and might have reacted to the strike on the Crimean bridge. That's what people here think. But overall, this most people here are convinced is something that Russia had planned quite some time ago, and there has been some talk. The city administration, the institutions, the services are pretty quick at responding and also at clearing up the sites after any attack, also filling in, for example, holes in the road. We had last Monday, we had one major road being hit, and it was filled up just 2 days later.
Matthias Böhlinger with the latest from Kyiv. Thank you very much. Ukraine says drones made in Iran were used in many of Russia's recent attacks. Tehran denies selling drones to Russia, but analysts have evidence of Iranian instructors training Russian soldiers to use them. Here's a look at what the unmanned tools of war are and what Russia is doing with them.
They call it the moped for its loud, crude mechanical noise that can be heard from far away. The Iran-made Shahed 136 drone, here seen hovering over Odessa. But it's no joke. These drones can have devastating effects. Though Iran denies selling them to Russia, Kyiv says fragments of this drone, shot down in southern Ukraine, have Iranian as well as Russian markings. The Shahed is a series of drones made by Iran. The 136 has a wingspan of 2.5 meters and carries 40 kilograms of explosives. It's classified as a loitering munition. It can hang out for hours in the air until a target is found. Then it zooms in, becoming a missile that destroys itself on impact. What makes Iranian drones useful to Russia is that they are cheap. The Shahed 136 costs about 20,000 euros each. Russia flies them alone or in low-altitude swarms, hoping that one or two will get through Ukrainian air defenses, which have trouble seeing them, although several have been shot down. Ukraine is still figuring out how to deal with the threat they pose. But they will have to act fast. President Zelensky claims that Russia has ordered more than 2,000 of the Shaheds.
Earlier, I spoke to Ulrike Franke. She's a senior policy fellow at the European Council on Foreign Relations in London and an expert on drones and artificial intelligence. I asked her why these kamikaze drones are so dangerous.
I think in this instance, they're mainly dangerous because they're available and Russia has a lot of them. I was actually really impressed by the number of drones that Iran apparently has been able to deliver to Russia so quickly. And that means that Russia can use them, can use a lot of them and can attack very different places, well behind the front line. So nowhere is safe, basically, in Ukraine. And I think that's exactly the message that Russia wants to send. It's terrorizing the civilians, and it's just destroying the civilian infrastructure. And so, Russia is trying to show the Ukrainians that even far away from the front lines, they can be attacked.
So right now, they're plainly trying to sow fear and terror with this. Is that what you're saying?
Yes, I think that's exactly right. That's what these systems are good for. And for Russia, they're also, I mean, they're relatively cheap. We have a price tag of around 20,000 euros or dollars, as we heard, which is much cheaper than, say, ballistic missiles or anything else that Russia has been using to attack behind the front lines. And so Russia can do this for quite a long time. And if Iran is able to indeed deliver thousands of these systems, as has been claimed, this can go on for a long time. And it also means that the Ukrainian air defense will need to work overtime. So it just binds a lot of forces because they will need to watch the sky all the time and defend against these drones. And that, of course, makes things more difficult for the Ukrainian military.
Yeah, Ukraine was able to intercept some of the drones today, but it seems Russia is planning to step up its game even more, intending to buy more drones from Iran. How can Ukraine go about fending off a growing threat from the sky?
Yeah, so I've actually been rather impressed by the numbers of drones that Ukraine has apparently shut down. Of course, it's a bit difficult to verify, but there have been pictures and videos. So it's rather clear that Ukraine has managed to shoot down these systems with different means. So Ukraine has several aerial defense systems. Most of those aren't specifically made to defend against drones, but rather aircraft or missile or other things, but they can still be used against these drones. So that's good news, but there have still been quite a few that have gone through. And it just kind of reiterates that Ukraine is going to need more air defenses and ideally systems that are specifically designed to detect and fight off these drones. Because not only may the systems that the Ukrainians have not be specifically designed for it, there's also a cost question. So you don't want to use something where, you know, it costs 100,000 euros to use it once against a system that only costs 20,000 to the enemy. I mean, you can only do this for so long. So there's a cost efficiency question as well. So Ukraine will need more systems and will need to keep watching the sky, which, again, kind of just binds forces and makes it harder for Ukraine to defend on on the front line, for example.
In recent weeks, we've been talking a lot about the Ukrainian counteroffensive and the gains made on Russian-occupied territory. What does the increased use of these suicide drones mean for the war and what happens on parts of the country that have become a battlefield already?
I mean, obviously, it's difficult to tell, and we can only speculate. So I think at this point, you can see that Russia is mainly using these systems to terrorize the population, to destroy or at least attack civilian infrastructure, which is going to, frustrate the civilian population even more, will destroy the economy even more. All of this has an impact on the war, although not a direct one. But of course, you can use these systems also directly on the battlefield, attack troop formations, tanks, etc. So this may also play a role going forward. I would be surprised if these systems were decisive. I mean, there's rarely one system that's decisive in a war. But nevertheless, I think the number here really matters. If we really are talking about thousands and Iran just keeps them coming and Russia can throw them onto the battlefield, this may impact the war quite a bit. But of course, other elements are important too. So let's not just focus on this one system. It's not going to decide the war.
That was very clear. Ulrike Franke of the European Council on Foreign Relations in London. Thank you very much for coming onto the show tonight.
Thank you.
Well, here in Germany, Russia's war on Ukraine was the main focus as heads of the country's intelligence services gave testimony to members of parliament today. The agency said they were well prepared to counter possible Russian interference in Germany. A key concern is over possible drone espionage. Chancellor Olaf Scholz got a look for himself on Monday as he visited troops at a military training site in northern Germany. As part of his inspection tour, he was also shown one of the Bundeswehr's own drone models. Let's get more on this from our DW political correspondent, Simon Young. Simon, good to see you. So Germany's intelligence services say they are well prepared to counter possible interference from Russia. How big do they see those threats to be?
Yeah, I think they're pretty significant. The intelligence services say they're worried about a whole range of potential threats, particularly in connection with Russia. And I think this story about spy drones is one of the most serious. There have been a number of reports of small drones, sightings of drones operating near German military bases where Ukrainian personnel are being trained to use the equipment that Germany is providing to Ukraine at the moment. And it's the intelligence authorities say that they're not able to say who's behind those intrusions, but they are taking them seriously and stepping up measures to counteract. They're also worried about continuing cyber threats from Russia. We've seen those in the past, and they also say that they're taking action there. I think they're worried about disinformation campaigns organised by Russia on social media, and we've seen examples of that in the past, and also attempts by various Russian sources to, infiltrate the political process here in Germany, in particular just by buying, using cash to buy influence and access. I think in particular there have been reports, that they've been able to access that kind of influence, in particular through far-right politicians, some of whom have sort of retweeted and cheer-led for the Putin view of things to their followers. So there's a whole range of threats that these intelligence chiefs are flagging up.
A big fear here in Germany are attacks on the critical infrastructure. How vulnerable is Germany in that regard?
Well, I think we've seen a number of things. There have been warnings about attacks on power plants, on the energy infrastructure and so on. What we have seen are attacks just recently on the rail network, people cutting cables there. It's a bit mysterious. Again, we don't know for sure who's behind it. The same with the attacks on the gas pipelines in the Baltic Sea recently. That's been widely blamed on Russia, although I think without clear evidence so far. So I think the authorities are worried, not just that these kind of attacks on infrastructure could occur, but also that they could spark a wider response, particularly going into this winter. We know there are going to be problems with energy. There's going to be potentially shortfalls in supply, price spikes, and people probably demonstrating on the streets, getting very anxious about that. There could even potentially be electricity blackouts. And I think all of that could create an atmosphere in which it would be rather easy for foreign antagonists to use that to sort of foment destabilisation. So these are the kind of scenarios and fears that the intelligence community are talking about.
Political correspondent Simon Young, always a pleasure.